Parts of the South received severe weather this week. As of Wednesday morning, dozens of tornadoes touched down in Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana. Heavy wind, flooding, and hail as large as tennis balls were all part of a winter storm headed north. But is this unusual weather for this time of year? Here to talk with us about this is Barry Keim, Louisiana state climatologist. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's great to be here. Thanks.
So first, let's talk about the severe weather on Tuesday and Wednesday morning. What was happening?
Well, it was a very strong cold front actually pushed through, and given how warm the sea surface temperatures are out in the Gulf of Mexico, and this air coming out of Canada is pretty cold right now and dry. And when you have these two air masses mixing up, some action can happen. And that's exactly what played out over this past week across that particular region.
So in Louisiana specifically, did we have a lot of tornado activity?
I believe there was only one reported tornado, possibly a second. It may have been the same tornado being reported twice. But most of the action actually was in, just to the east of Louisiana into Mississippi, and it spilled over into Alabama. So we had this big swath. But there were other types of damage in Louisiana in terms of high wind and hail. So we were right in the mix with all the severe weather that played out. Now, more typically, we think of tornadoes occurring in the spring, and we do have a peak in the spring here in Louisiana, but we also have a secondary peak in November. So it's not uncommon for us to get tornadic activity here in the state at this time of year.
Wow, okay, so like a second severe bout of severe weather in November. Why November specifically?
My suspicion is, the fronts can be pretty cold at this time of year coming out of Canada, and the sea surface temperatures are still relatively warm. So that mix, that combination of the lack of energy coming out of Canada, mixing up with this very moist air coming off the Gulf of Mexico, it just creates a very unstable, unsettled environment that can pop off some really severe weather sometimes.
Okay, so sometimes though, it's not something that we should be expecting every single year.
We do get severe weather almost every year, and sometimes you get the big tornado outbreaks. Other times you might just pop off one or two tornadoes. This was actually a pretty severe outbreak here, and we were just unlucky that this go round. But it's not uncommon to be having these kinds of weather activities at this time of year.
So is it safe to say that, going forward into December, we won't see this type of weather, or are we still in that area?
I would say it's still possible, but maybe in terms of Louisiana, somewhat less likely. As we look at the climatology, we tend to get more tornadic activity in November than we do in December and deeper into the winter. And then it picks up again once we get into the spring. But we can get tornadoes in any month, and we always have to be on our guard and watch for severe weather watches and warnings.
So here in Louisiana, our big thing is really hurricanes. Not a lot of people have basements or places underground to hide out. How do you stay safe during a tornado event?
The best thing to do, especially if you don't, obviously a basement is the safest place to go. I assume some places up in North Louisiana may have basements. Here in South Louisiana, they're very uncommon. Our water table is too high. That would basically be would have water in them most of the time, so they would be non-functional. But if you're in a house without a basement and there is imminent tornadic activity about to take place, the best thing to do is get into a small interior room, like a bathroom where you have a lot of pipes and things like that can add extra support for the walls. But being in an interior room also, or a hallway, is much safer than being on a exterior wall somewhere that's more likely to be damaged. And you can take cover. If you see a tornado bearing down on you, you could pull in a mattress and cover yourself, because you never know what might happen. In a very severe set of circumstances.
So the gist is, make sure that you're basically barricaded somewhere small, no windows, and just, tightly packed in there.
All of that is correct. Yeah, like I said, an interior hallway and interior bathroom are probably the safest locations, but a small bedroom, if it's in the interior of the house, is definitely a smarter place to be than an exterior room.
All right, so we've gone over the severe weather that happened on Tuesday and Wednesday. Is there anything else, I guess, that you've noticed this year that you thought was interesting with weather patterns?
Well, obviously this tropical season was very interesting. The hurricane season is closing. It was an interesting year relative to the last couple.
Yes.
Better for us in a big way. It ended up, the forecasts going into this season were for an above normal year. and we ended up with 14. We were exactly average. And now that's assuming we don't get any more in December. Any December hurricanes, rather, will be attributed to this season. So we still could get a late season hurricane. I mean, we'll have to wait and see. But as of right now, the season is officially over. And we end with 14 named storms, and that is considered an average season. So, and thank goodness, none of those really affected the Gulf in any major way, with the exception of Ian, which was a big deal for Florida. That was the signature storm this year. Well, I'm sure will be a retired name this season. But given the weather patterns and the way it played out, Louisiana was relatively protected. We had several frontal events that pushed through in September and into October. And it basically just created an environment where the storms either went south of the Gulf of Mexico, made landfall in the Caribbean or into Mexico itself, or they turned up the East Coast. And so we had very little activity on the north central Gulf Coast. And given the last 2 years, I don't think anybody's complaining. We really did need a break, needed some time to catch up and dig out of what, based on what transpired over the last 2 seasons.
Yeah, I don't think anybody is arguing with that. So hopefully we have a nice, calm end to 2022. But we are out of time. Thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.